Hey there, just a heads up, this episode of the Judo Science Podcast was created with help from AI. Some of the voices you'll hear are synthetic, but the ideas come from real research and real judo.
If you've ever watched a high-level judo match, you know it's just brutal. I mean, explosive and frankly, completely exhausting to even watch.
Oh, absolutely. You're looking at maybe 4 minutes, but it's packed with these maximal intermittent bursts of effort.
Yeah, like a series of power lifts, sprints, and these intense isometric struggles all mashed together.
Right.
So our mission today is really a deep dive into how athletes in these kinds of explosive intermittent sports can best optimize their fitness using structured training.
Mm-hmm.
You shared some great sources that dig deep into which types of high-intensity interval training, everything from just general running to really specific judo drills, give the absolute best physical benefits.
That's the goal. Moving beyond just generic advice.
Exactly. We want to get into the science of specificity. Okay, so let's unpack this.
Well, to start, I think it's really vital to understand the kind of physiological fire these athletes are dealing with. Judo combat, it's characterized as this supreme strength task repeated over about 4 minutes.
At high intensity the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
And this drives a massive anaerobic contribution. We're talking lactate levels often hitting between 12 and 20 millimoles per liter.
That sounds incredibly high, like pure internal chaos, biologically speaking.
It is. It's the biological equivalent of being redlined. But here's the tricky part, the balance. Because athletes compete multiple times a day in a tournament format, their oxidative system, their aerobic fitness, becomes crucial too.
For recovery between matches.
Exactly. It's the engine that helps them clear out all that lactate buildup and recover quickly between those really intense fights. So any effective training program has to perfectly balance both anaerobic and aerobic systems.
Right. Which brings us straight to our first big question. Does specificity, doing judo-like things, actually trump just generic conditioning like running?
Mm-hmm.
We're looking at a study that tested this principle directly. They had 59 adolescent judo athletes, both male and female, and they added 4 weeks of intensified training 4 times a week, which is quite a lot. And then they followed it with 12 days of tapering, reduced training to allow for recovery and adaptation.
And the study design was really clever because it isolated 3 very distinct high-intensity interval training methods to see exactly what kind of adaptation each one produced.
That's right. The first experimental group was the Kumikata group. Now, for listeners, kumikata is that intense grip fighting, that static isometric tug-of-war for the jacket grip, usually in the standing phase.
Okay, so strength and isometric holds. What was the second?
The second was the uchikomi group. They focused on repetitive, high-speed technical entries without actually throwing the partner. You can sort of think of it like intense shadow boxing, but while gripping someone.
Yeah.
Speed and technique repetition.
Got it. Speed focus. And the third?
And the third was the running group. Just straightforward, generic cardio, running back and forth over 6 meters as fast as possible.
Okay, so we've got isometric power, technical speed, and general conditioning set up against each other. And the results, I think these were detailed by Ouergui and colleagues. They really seem to hammer home that specificity principle, but maybe with some surprising twists.
Definitely some nuance. So for instance, the Kumikata group, the grip fighters, they showed superior performance in the counter movement jump test.
Mm-hmm.
That was compared with all the other groups, uchikomi, running, and the control group.
Wait, the counter movement jump, the CMJ, that measures explosive leg power, right? How fast you can jump vertically.
Exactly.
So the static gripping and pulling directly translated to jumping higher. How does that work? That seems counterintuitive.
It is fascinating, isn't it? The thinking is that the specific isometric effort in kumikata demands incredible core stability and static force generation, particularly in the torso and the grip, obviously. And when that stored static energy is then released dynamically, it seems to enhance the sort of elastic properties and the total force output of the lower body too. Leads to better vertical power. It improves their ability to rapidly switch on those powerful, explosive muscle fibers.
Okay, that makes sense. It's like training the whole kinetic chain to withstand tension and then explode from it.
Yeah.
So kumikata boosted that general explosive judo fitness. What about the uchikomi, the technical drills?
Well, as you might expect, the uchikomi group focusing on speed and repetition of the technique entry, they showed superior performance specifically in the Uchikomi speed test.
So a very direct effect there.
The training outcome was highly focused in that case. You train for speed of a specific movement, you get better at the speed of that specific movement.
Right. So the crucial takeaway from this first study then feels very practical for coaches.
Exactly. Gives clear direction. If you need to enhance your athlete's general judo-specific physical fitness, think explosive power, grip endurance, then kumikata-based high-intensity interval training looks like your best bet based on this. But if the goal is specifically to fine-tune technical speed, getting those entries faster, then Uchikomi is the more effective prescription. You're training the exact skill you want to improve.
That distinction between general physical quality, like power, and specific technical quality, like speed, is a fantastic insight. Okay, now let's go deeper, sort of into the engine room.
Okay.
We're shifting to a second study that looked more closely at the physiological changes, what's actually happening inside the body in adult judo athletes. And this one used low-volume, high-intensity interval training protocols.
Yeah, this was a really rapid, intense protocol. They did 2 blocks of 10 sets. Each set was 20 seconds all-out effort, followed by just 10 seconds of rest.
Wow, that's a tough work-rest ratio.
Very tough. And they did this twice a week for only 4 weeks. So short and sharp. And they tested 3 different training modes again, but this time focusing on localized effects, upper body versus lower body.
And what were those 3 modes?
Okay, so they used a lower body cycle ergometer, basically, pure leg work on a bike, then an upper body cycle ergometer, pure arm, and back work, like hand cycling. And the third was, again, the Uchikomi technique entrance, the judo-specific drill.
So they really wanted to see if adaptations were, like, stuck in the muscles being directly trained?
Precisely. Let's start with the aerobic side. Did any of these quick, intense protocols manage to actually increase the athlete's aerobic ceiling, their maximal aerobic power, or MAP?
You'd think maybe the intensity would help, but...
Only one group showed an improvement there. It was the upper body training group, the ones doing the arm cycling. They saw a significant 12.3% increase, but only in their upper body graded test.
Just the upper body.
Just the upper body, which really highlights a key lesson. These training adaptations were primarily muscle-specific. You train the upper body aerobically, only the upper body gets better at sustaining that aerobic output.
That is surprisingly localized. Okay, but what about the anaerobic power? That ability to generate massive, short bursts of force that judo absolutely demands.
Now this is where the integrated movements of judo itself really stood out. Only the Uchikomi group showed benefits for both upper and lower body segments in anaerobic power.
Both? How much?
They increased peak power, that's PP, the max anaerobic burst in both their upper body tests by about 16.7% and their lower body tests by about 8.5%.
Okay, so the Uchikomi drill, even though it's a technique drill...
Right. Despite being technical, it's physically comprehensive. It engages the leg drive and the arm pull simultaneously, just like in real judo. So it provided these broad anaerobic benefits that the isolated cycling protocols just couldn't match.
The specificity of the actual judo movement delivered a superior integrated physiological result. That's powerful. But you mentioned something else, the hormonal response. That sounded really eye-opening.
Absolutely. This was maybe one of the most striking findings. Both the lower body training group and the Uchikomi training group experienced this massive positive shift in their hormonal environment. Specifically, an increase in the testosterone to cortisol ratio.
And how big was that increase?
Well, for the Uchikomi group, this ratio jumped up by as much as 61.4%.
61%. That's huge. For the listener, maybe quickly explain why that ratio is such a big deal for an athlete.
Sure. So testosterone is your primary anabolic or muscle-building hormone. Cortisol is the main catabolic or breakdown hormone, often released during stress, like intense training. A big increase in this ratio, where testosterone is high relative to cortisol, suggests the body is shifting into a highly anabolic or building state.
So it's not just about feeling good.
Oh no, it's foundational. It's crucial for recovery, for muscle repair, and ultimately for improving performance capability over time. So that Uchikomi protocol, it wasn't just working their muscles hard. It seems it was fundamentally changing their body's ability to adapt and build capacity.
Wow. So, the crucial insight here. Yes, training was mainly muscle-specific for aerobic gains, but that specific multi-joint Uchikomi movement delivered integrated performance gains across both anaerobic power and seems to have boosted their systemic anabolic recovery potential.
Exactly. A very compelling case for specificity.
Okay, now we've seen the science in the lab, or at least in controlled studies. Let's look at applying this in the real world. You mentioned Aurélien Broussel-Derval, a coach who's worked with Olympic judo teams. He outlined his approach for elite athletes who basically have to compete constantly, year-round.
Yeah, his big challenge is balancing adaptation, getting fitter, with the constant need to be ready for the next competition. There's often no long off-season.
Right, a very different problem.
So his philosophy uses this really smart three-step periodization. It transitions gradually from purely general conditioning towards hyper-specific judo combat as training itself.
Okay, what's step one?
Step one is the preparation phase. Here, the focus is strictly on developing the core physical qualities, strength, aerobic base, etc., almost irrespective of the specific movement demands of judo. He uses traditional high-intensity interval training weapons, as he calls them, like running, rowing, biking, just building the foundational engine.
Makes sense. Then you start to dial in the specificity.
Right. Step two is the oriented phase. Now they increase the specificity, choosing training methods that look and feel more like judo movements, while still maybe isolating certain physiological targets. Think medicine ball throws, resistance band work that mimics throws, maybe some uchikoni variations.
Being closer to the sport.
Exactly. And then finally, the most advanced stage is the specific phase. This is where the judo activity itself becomes the high-intensity interval training weapon. Derval calls this the Hajime model.
Like start-stop in a match.
Precisely. They replicate actual fight sequences, manipulating the work periods, jumé, and rest periods, overload specific energy systems. So you're combining heavy strength, power, anaerobic work, and aerobic recovery, all within the context of actual judo sparring or drills.
Yeah.
The training is the sport, just structured intensely.
That's fascinating. And he also highlighted something interesting about ground combat in Waza, didn't he? Even suggesting it for non-combat sports. That seemed a bit unusual for high-intensity interval training.
Well, it's a really interesting cross-application idea. Aurélien suggests integrating floor combat, Nawaza, into high-intensity interval training sessions for team sports, maybe like rugby or handball.
Why? What's the benefit there?
Well, Nawaza allows for incredibly high intensity because of all the repeated, sustained, isometric contractions, that constant gripping, pulling, pushing, struggling for position on the ground. But because the work is done primarily on the floor, it's actually a much safer approach regarding contact injury risk compared to, say, high-intensity running with changes of direction or full-contact standing drills. It delivers intense, integrated physical stress without the same level of impact or collision risk.
That's actually very clever. Extreme intensity, but maybe safer on the joints and lower risk of acute injury. Okay, so we firmly established that specific high-intensity interval training seems superior for performance gains. But what does this all mean for those really experienced athletes, the ones already operating near their physical peak?
That's the perfect lead-in to our final source. This study looked at 12 national team-level judo athletes over a longer period, 12 weeks, and they compared interval anaerobic training using two different forms: high-intensity interval running versus high-intensity throwing drills.
Right, and they used that counterbalancing design, 6 weeks of one type, then 6 weeks of the other. And I recall the study had a specific hypothesis about this. They thought maybe the novelty of the non-specific running might actually push these elite athletes further, precisely because they were already so adapted to the judo-specific stuff.
That was exactly the hypothesis, yes. They wondered if shaking things up with something different would provide a greater stimulus for adaptation.
And what happened?
Well, the results were fascinating, especially regarding the time frame needed for adaptation in these highly trained individuals. Significant improvements were only observed after the full 12 weeks of cumulative training.
Only after 12 weeks, not after the first 6-week block.
It really suggests that persistent, sustained effort is required just to nudge the needle forward at that elite level. The body strongly resists change when it's already highly optimized.
So what kind of gains did they see after 12 weeks?
They saw some pretty substantial gains eventually. Things like uphill running performance improved by over 13%, and their score on the special judo fitness test improved by 9%. But again, only when that cumulative training stress hit the 12-week mark.
Okay, and did the running turn out to be superior as hypothesized?
No, it didn't. Contrary to their hypothesis, the non-specific running was not superior. In fact, the data actually suggested a trend that the sport-specific throwing drills were more effective in generating those performance gains.
So specificity wins again, even at the elite level, even when trying to break plateaus.
It really seems that way. Specificity appears to be king.
And there was one more important detail, wasn't there, about the physiological ceiling, their aerobic capacity.
Yes, that's right. Despite 12 weeks of really intense high-intensity interval training being added to their normal training, these extra sessions did not lead to substantial changes in their maximal oxygen uptake, their Tex-Max.
So no improvement in their basic aerobic engine size.
Essentially, no, which tells us that at this elite level, adding more high-intensity interval training probably isn't about raising the absolute aerobic ceiling anymore. It's much more about fine-tuning things like power output, fatigue resistance, anaerobic capacity, and the efficiency of movement within their existing aerobic potential. It becomes a tool for specialized refinement, not for a general conditioning overhaul.
Okay, so this deep dive has really confirmed a powerful principle, I think, for anyone training for sports involving intermittent explosive effort. Specificity is just paramount.
It seems unavoidable.
Whether you use kumikata for developing power and grip, or uchikomi for speed, or throwing drills for integrated performance, it looks like high-intensity interval training that closely mimics the specific demands of your sport delivers superior and often quite localized performance and physiological gains compared to just generic exercise like running.
That's the clear message from these studies.
Next time on the Judo Science Podcast, Episode 25, Grip, Power, and Preventing Pain, Strength and Conditioning Insights for Judo.